Hey, before we
Mercy.
start, if you love enemies to lovers,
Please have
jealous
mercy.
alpha energy, and
Don't
stories
kill
that
me, I
keep you
beg you.
guessing, hit subscribe right now. This series is going to wreck you in the best way. Let's go. The gun went off at 8:49 in the morning. Not metaphorically, not as a warning. 3 floors below Kim Joon-ho's penthouse headquarters, in the marble lobby of the Kang Tower, someone fired a single shot into the ceiling and screamed a name. His name. Joon-ho was already moving before the echo died. He was at his window in 4 steps, phone in hand, 2 of his men already sprinting through the feed on his security monitor. Standard breach protocol. Lobby locked. Elevators killed. The shooter, young, shaking, bleeding from his left hand, was already on his knees with 4 gun barrels pointed at his skull by the time Joon-ho exhaled. Amateur. A message from someone who wanted his attention without the nerve to come get it themselves. He turned away from the window, and that is when he saw her. Zara Banks stood in the doorway of his office, both coffees still in her hands, completely unbothered by the chaos that had just erupted 3 floors beneath them. She wore an oversized cream turtleneck and dark jeans, her locks pulled back, and she was looking at the security monitor the way most people looked at mildly interesting weather. "Your 8 o'clock is going to be late," she said, walking in and setting his coffee on the desk without ceremony. "Also, whoever sent that kid needs a lesson in dramatic timing. You were literally just about to sign the Busan contracts." Joon-ho stared at her. She dropped into the chair across from him, flipped open her folder, and crossed her legs. "I flagged 3 translation errors your last interpreter made in the Choi documents. Errors that nearly collapsed the Busan negotiation before it started, by the way. You should know your team nearly cost you $40 million last quarter through bad language alone." "I know," he said. She looked up. "You knew?" "Yes. And you didn't fix it?" "I was waiting to see if you would find it." A pause. Something moved through her eyes. Not quite a smile, not quite irritation. Something in between that only Zara Banks could weaponize without trying. "You're testing me," she said flatly. "I'm always testing you. And you passed. Again." He finally picked up his coffee. "You're still late. Traffic. You live 4 minutes away." "Emotional traffic," she said, completely seriously, and looked back down at her folder. He almost smiled. He caught it before it reached his face, which was a skill he had spent years perfecting and which Zara alone had ever made genuinely difficult. Everyone else in his life flinched when he entered a room. Security teams straightened. Lieutenants measured their words. Rivals across negotiation tables stopped breathing. Zara ordered him coffee and corrected his contracts and called his Thursday meetings boring to his face. 5 years. She had been inside his world for 5 years, brought in originally as a translator and cultural liaison. An American-born, Seoul-raised woman who spoke 4 languages and code-switched between boardrooms and back alleys without breaking a sweat. She had watched him conduct business that would make lesser people disappear. She had never flinched once. He had never been able to decide if that made her the bravest person he knew or the most reckless. He was still watching her face, which was a habit he had never successfully broken, when the turtleneck slipped. It was nothing. Just fabric moving the way oversized things move on people who carry themselves freely. A careless shift of the shoulder as she reached across the desk to slide the flagged documents toward him. The neckline dropped 3 inches. Maybe 4. Enough. There, just below her right collarbone, pressed into her deep brown skin like something deliberate. A mark. Dark at the center, bruised at the edges. The specific, unmistakable signature of a mouth that had taken its time. The coffee cup stopped halfway to his lips. His eyes didn't move. His face didn't change. Every single thing inside him went absolutely silent in the way that precedes something catastrophic. Zara glanced up and caught the direction of his stare. She looked down, tugged the fabric back into place with the same energy someone uses to fix a slipped strap, and returned her eyes to the documents. "Don't," she said simply. He set the cup down. Very carefully. The way you set something down when your hands are doing something you haven't authorized them to do. "Zara." "Joon-ho." "Who did that?" She didn't look up. "That is not a conversation we're having." "It isn't a conversation. It's a question, and I'm not answering it." She turned a page. "Can we talk about the Choi meeting? It's in 3 hours, and you haven't confirmed which terms you're willing to flex on." The silence in the room changed texture entirely. Zara had worked beside this man long enough to understand his silences the way sailors understand water, by the specific quality of the stillness before something moves beneath the surface. She knew his thinking silence, his dangerous silence, his exhausted silence that he would never admit to anyone. This one was none of those. She looked up. His jaw was set. His eyes were on her with the kind of focus that didn't belong in a business meeting, the kind that had nothing to do with contracts or Choi or Busan. It was the focus of a man doing violent arithmetic behind a perfectly composed face. "You're being ridiculous," she said quietly. "I haven't said anything. You don't have to." She closed the folder. "We are friends. We have been friends for 5 years. What I do with my personal life has nothing." "Who?" His voice dropped an entire register. Not louder. The opposite. Zara stood up. She was not a small woman, and she had never in her life made herself smaller for anyone, including the man currently vibrating with barely contained fury across a mahogany desk. She picked up her coffee, held his gaze, and spoke with the precise, deliberate calm of someone who has decided not to be moved. "Drop it, Joon-ho." She walked out. He didn't stop her. He sat completely still for 11 seconds. He counted, without meaning to. And then he picked up his phone and sent a single message to one name. "Come to my office. Now." If this story already has you by the throat, subscribe. Drop a comment telling me who you think left that mark. We're just getting started. Park Sung-jin arrived in 4 minutes. That was the first thing Joon-ho noticed. Not 3 minutes, which would have been standard from Sung-jin's office on the same floor. Not 6 or 7, which would have meant he was coming from somewhere else in the building. For minutes. The exact time it took to receive a message, feel something shift in your chest, and spend 60 seconds composing yourself before moving. Sung-jin entered the way he always did, relaxed, measured, carrying the specific confidence of a man who had stood in this office 10,000 times and never been on the wrong side of what happened inside it. 10 years. They had built this entire empire side by side, Joon-ho and Sung-jin, through things that bonded men the way nothing peaceful ever could. Raids and losses and nights when the organization nearly collapsed entirely. There was not supposed to be anything between them that required composure. Joon-ho looked at him for a long time without speaking. Sung-jin met his eyes without flinching, which was exactly what an innocent man would do, and exactly what a very skilled guilty one would do also. "You called," Sung-jin said. "Close the door." He did. "Sit down." He sat. Joon-ho came around the desk slowly and stood in front of him, arms folded, and looked at Sung-jin's neck. There was a mark there too. Faint. The kind that comes from fingernails rather than a mouth, pressed in during something urgent, something close. The kind that comes from pulling someone toward you, or from someone gripping you while you stayed. "Tell me where you were last night," Joon-ho said. Something happened in Sung-jin's face. Fast. Nearly invisible. The micro-expression of a man who had prepared for this question and still wasn't ready for it. "I had dinner in Itaewon. Came back by 11. You can check the entry logs." "I already did." Joon-ho tilted his head. "You came back at 11:43. Itaewon is 20 minutes from here on an empty night. Dinner ends at what, 9:10? Where were you for the hour in between?" Sung-jin held his gaze. "With a friend." "Which friend?" "A private matter, boss." The word boss landed differently than it usually did. Sung-jin had been calling him that for a decade, and it had always carried the comfortable weight of loyalty, chosen rather than enforced. Right now it sounded like a shield. Joon-ho unfolded his arms. "I am going to ask you one more time," he said, very quietly. "And I need you to understand that the answer you give me in the next 10 seconds will determine everything that happens between us from this moment forward. Not today. Not this month. Everything. Do you understand me?" Sung-jin's throat moved. "Yes." "Where were you last night?" The silence stretched like something being pulled to its breaking point. Sung-jin looked at him. Really looked. The way men look at each other when they are calculating not just what is safe to say, but what is survivable to carry alone. "I can't tell you," Sung-jin said finally. And those 4 words told Joon-ho everything. Not because they were a confession, but because Park Sung-jin, who had sat across from rival bosses with guns on the table without blinking, who had once taken a bullet in a parking garage and driven himself to the safe house before calling for help, who did not do fear, not ever, not once in 10 years. Park Sung-jin could not meet his eyes when he said them. Joon-ho straightened up. He walked to the window. Seoul spread out below him in gray morning light, enormous and indifferent, the city that had made him and that he had spent 15 years making his. He pressed 2 fingers to the glass. "You have until this meeting ends," he said, without turning around. 1 hour. Tell me everything, voluntarily. The where, the when, the why, and especially, who asked you to?" He heard Sung-jin's breath catch. After that, he continued, still facing the window, "I start asking differently. And we both know what that means." He turned around. Sung-jin was on his feet. His face had changed completely now. The composure was still there, but it was structural, holding something back rather than reflecting something real. His hands were at his sides, and his jaw was tight. Joon-ho. First name. A decade of first names between them in private. "It's not what you think." "I know," Joon-ho said. "It's worse." He walked to the door and opened it himself, which was not something he did, and the deliberateness of it was its own kind of verdict. 1 hour, Sung-jin. In the elevator going down, Zara's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. Unknown number. The message was 4 lines. He knows. And he's about to find out the rest. What Sung-jin was doing there wasn't what you think. "You were never supposed to be alive this morning. Leave Seoul tonight, Zara. Before he finds out what you're really involved in." She read it twice. The elevator opened into the lobby. The marble floor still had a scuff mark where the shooter had knelt. Security had cleaned the debris, but the ceiling tile above the reception desk was still cracked, a dark hole in the white surface like a period at the end of a sentence. Zara stood in the middle of the lobby for a moment, completely still, her coffee in one hand and her phone in the other. Then she typed back, "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Someone who was supposed to make sure you didn't ask questions." "I couldn't do it." Her stomach dropped straight through the marble floor. She looked up at the security camera in the corner of the lobby, looked directly into it, because she absolutely knew, that somewhere upstairs, Kim Joon-ho was watching every feed in this building right now. She pocketed her phone. She walked out of the building into the cold Seoul morning, and she did not look back. Are you breathing? Because I'm not. Subscribe if you're already obsessed, and comment what you think that message means. Mid-episode, and I already know your heart is racing. Good. Keep reading. Joon-ho saw her leave. He was back at his desk, security feeds pulled up on the side monitor, and he watched Zara walk through the lobby, stop, look up at the camera, directly, deliberately, the way she did everything, and then walk out into the street. She knew he was watching. She always knew. He pulled up her location on the secondary system, a precaution he had installed on her phone 18 months ago after a rival organization had made a move on 3 people close to him in the same week. He had never told her. He had told himself it was protocol. He had believed that, mostly, until approximately 40 minutes ago when a piece of fabric slipped and something inside him had detonated without permission. Her dot moved south on Tehran Aro, walking pace. Steady. He watched it for a moment. Then he called his head of security. Pull last night's external footage. Every camera within 2 blocks of this building, 6 p.m. to midnight. And pull Sung-jin's vehicle tracker. I want everywhere he went. A pause. Do it before you do anything else today. He hung up. He sat back in his chair and pressed his knuckles against his mouth and thought, very precisely, about what he knew. Someone had sent a shooter to his lobby this morning. Amateur, shaking, clearly a messenger rather than a real threat. A distraction, possibly, or a test of his response time. Sung-jin had been somewhere he wouldn't name last night, and had come back carrying evidence of closeness with someone. Evidence that matched what Joon-ho had seen on Zara's skin. And Zara, who feared nothing, who had once calmly talked her way through a police checkpoint with 3 of his men in the back seat, had stood in the lobby of his building and looked at a security camera like she was trying to tell him something she couldn't say out loud. He stood up. The thing he refused to examine too carefully, the thing that lived in the locked room at the back of everything he was, pressed against the door hard enough that he felt it physically. A tightness across his sternum. A specific kind of anger that had nothing to do with the organization and everything to do with one woman who had been inside his life for 5 years and inside his every unguarded thought for at least 3 of them. He had never said it. He had never let himself even fully think it. There were reasons. Good ones. The life he ran was not one you pulled someone into voluntarily, and Zara was already technically inside it. Translator, liaison, the one person who moved between his world and the legitimate one fluently. That was already too close. Pulling her closer was a decision he had refused to make, deliberately, repeatedly, with the discipline of a man who understood that some lines, once crossed, cannot protect the person on the other side. But Sung-jin. His phone rang. Head of security. 12 minutes. Faster than expected. Talk to me, Joon-ho said. Sir. The voice on the other end was careful in the way that meant what was coming was not small. We pulled the external footage. Park Sung-jin's vehicle left the building at 9:14 p.m. last night. He drove to an apartment building in Mapogu. He was there for 1 hour and 19 minutes. Joon-ho said nothing. Sir, the apartment is registered to a shell company. But the occupant on record, a pause. It's listed under a name we recognize. It's one of the front addresses for the Jong Network. The Jong Network. The one rival organization in Seoul that Joon-ho had not yet brought to the table. The one that had been making quiet moves for 8 months. The one he had 3 active intelligence operations running against right now. And Zara. His voice came out very controlled. Another pause. Longer. The building has one other registered visitor for last night. An alias we've seen before in Jong-linked activity. The security chief exhaled. Sir, we think she was there for a meeting. But there's no evidence she went willingly. The timeline suggests she arrived first, before Sung-jin. Which meant she wasn't there with Sung-jin. Which meant the mark and Sung-jin's scratch and the proximity of timing was either a coincidence or something far more elaborate. A setup, a frame, a story constructed to make him look in the wrong direction while something else entirely moved behind it. He was already walking to the door. Where is Sung-jin right now? Conference room B. He hasn't moved. Lock it, sir. Lock it and post 2 men outside. Nobody in or out until I get there. He ended the call. In the elevator, he pulled up Zara's location. Heard it had stopped moving. Mapogu. 3 blocks from the apartment building his security chief had just described. She had gone back. Why had she gone back? He called her. It rang 4 times. 5. She picked up on 6. Zara. He kept his voice level through an act of will that cost him more than he would ever admit. Tell me exactly where you are and do not lie to me. A pause. Background noise, street traffic, wind. I'm standing outside a building, she said carefully. I got a message this morning. From someone who said I was supposed to be dead. Her voice was steady, but he knew her voice the way he knew Seoul's skyline. Every variation, every weather. She was scared. She was choosing not to show it, which meant she was more scared than usual. Joon-ho, I think I've been used for something. I don't know what. But last night, I was invited to a meeting by someone I trusted. A contact I've used for 2 years. And now I'm standing outside the same building wondering if going inside is the last stupid thing I ever do. He was already in his car. Don't go inside, he said. I need answers. Zara. Her name in his mouth, stripped of everything else. Just the name. The way he had never quite let himself say it. I am 7 minutes away. You will not move. You will not go inside that building. And when I get there, he stopped. Restarted. When I get there, we are going to talk. About last night. About Sung-jin. About the fact that someone in my organization may have put you in danger, and I. He stopped again. The thing behind the locked door was completely off its hinges now. I should have protected you better, he said quietly. That is on me. Stay where you are. Silence on the line. Then, softly, and this was the thing that nearly undid him completely. She said, okay. Just that. Okay. Like she trusted him. Like she had always trusted him, even when he had given her no language for what she meant to him. He drove faster. Behind him, in the locked conference room on the 32nd floor, Park Sung-jin sat alone with whatever he was carrying. And whatever he was carrying was large enough that a man who had never broken in 10 years was currently pressing his hands flat on the table to stop them from shaking. And in a building in Mapogu, a door opened. Someone looked out. Someone who had seen Zara standing on the street. Someone who had not expected her to come back, but had very much planned for the possibility. And that's episode 1. Your heart is somewhere on the floor, and we haven't even gotten to the truth yet. Subscribe right now so you don't miss episode 2. Because Sung-jin is about to confess something that changes everything. Drop a comment. Do you think Zara knew more than she's telling? Like this video if Joon-ho saying, I should have protected you better, just ended you. See you in episode 2.